Hello and welcome back, unless you're new here, in which case, welcome. Nice to meet you. I'm Trixie, and today I'm going to be reading about all the books I read in January. It was a great month. I read 21 books and I enjoyed most of them, so I'm excited to talk about them. Let's begin. The first one I read was Finale by Becca Fitzpatrick. Kind of ironic that the first book I'm talking about is named Finale. You'd think this one would go at the end, but no. This is the last book in a young adult urban fantasy romance series about fallen angels. I am so glad I'm finally done with this series. I never have to read about or think about these characters and their story again, except for when I review them for YouTube, like right now. It's a great feeling because I am so over the series. I was so over it by the third book. I was forcing myself to finish it because I hate leaving a series unfinished, but it was a struggle. Nora, who I really liked in the first book, was insufferable in this. She was so whiny. I could not stand being in her perspective because all she does is complain about anything and everything. It was so annoying. And Patch, the love interest, who I referred to as the saving grace in the third book, was a stalker. In this one, just straight up stalker. He put a tracker on her jacket with the excuse that if she gets kidnapped, he'll be able to find her because she now has a lot of enemies, which is weird, but sure, okay, fine, whatever. But the thing is, he uses the tracker to spy on her and shows up wherever she is all the time, even if she's not in danger. Major stalker behavior. There's also a whole bunch of skinny shaming and calling girls hoes if they dress provocatively or are flirty. This was written in 2012, so I guess I can't complain about the demeaning language too much because times were different back then and everything, but I mean, it still bothers me. It always will. And while I was reading it, I was just getting so mad because I was ever okay. This just pissed me off, but times were different. One thing I did like about this, though, was that Nora was more of an active participant in the plot. She was doing things, not just having things being done to her like in the other books. That's one positive I can say. I'm not going to say anymore. I gave this book 3 stars because it's not the worst thing ever, but I think the series was dragged on for far too long, and it did not need to be 4 books. Not even 3, honestly. And then I read From Bloodnatch by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I'm so excited to talk about this one. Why didn't anyone tell me to read this book sooner? I can't believe it took me this long to read this masterpiece. It was so good. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I read it. This is about this girl named Poppy. Well, full disclosure, her name is Penelf or something. I don't know how to pronounce it. Every time I saw her full name written out, I would pronounce it a different way in my head. I have no idea how to say it. But her friends call her Poppy. And after living in her head for over 600 pages, I know her better than her friends do. So I feel like I have earned the right to call her Poppy too. So that's just where we're going with. So this is about Poppy, and she is the maiden. And what that means is that she is offered to the gods. For what reason, we don't know. Poppy doesn't even know. It's top secret stuff. Shh, it's a secret. You don't find out until the very end what that means. And as the maiden, she is very sheltered by the Ascended. There are these very strict rules that she has to live by. She isn't allowed to go out or have sex or even talk to most people. She has to conceal half her face when she's in public. She isn't allowed to do things that most other young adults can do. And there is this looming threat of this guy they call the Dark One. There are dissenters who are actively rebelling against the Ascended and their practices because they support the Dark One, and the Atlanteans, who are the enemies of the Ascended. And because there are all these threats to her life and she needs to be protected as the maiden, she gets a bodyguard named Hawk. I know that summary was really confusing, and this book was really confusing at first too. Like the first 100 pages, I was so lost on how the world works and everything, but once you get through that and you understand it, it is so much fun, I promise. So if you feel like that summary was really hard to follow, don't be discouraged. Just give it a try. In fact, one of my only critiques of this book was that it was so hard to follow in the beginning. I feel like there's a lot of info dumping, just a lot thrown at us at once, and I was so confusing, and I honestly wasn't enjoying the experience at first. I was just so confused. But then after you understand the world, it's really easy to follow, and the writing is good, and it's just such a fun time. I love it. I'm so glad I pushed through that because this ended up being a 5-star read. Yay! Yay! Woohoo! Round of applause. This is genuinely one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. Definitely see why I won the Goodreads Awards for the best romance of 2020. It was so good. I love Hawk so much. He's so playful and teasing and funny. I loved reading about him, and I love Poppy too. She's such a fatty. I love women who know how to wield a knife and can save themselves instead of relying on the hero to do it all the time. And even with the bodyguard thing, she was never portrayed as a damsel in distress, and I love that. I love a strong, capable, brave woman, and she's all that. And more. She's also really stubborn, and that made for some really entertaining scenes. I have a Goodreads list for my favorite fictional MMCs and another one for my favorite FMCs, and they made both lists, which not many books have been able to do. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because I love the characters in this book so much, and I just want to emphasize that. Also, Poppy and Hawk's banter was so good. It was so clever, so entertaining, so witty, so fun. It was just, I love it. I love this book so much. They were forced to ride a horse together multiple times in this, and the forced proximity, it was so good. There were also some scenes where they had to cuddle together for warmth in the cold, and I ate it up. The forced proximity strikes again. I know the cuddling together in the cold microtrope is cliche and overused, but I will eat it up every time. I don't care. It will never get old to me. It wasn't even just the romance that made this book stand out to me, though. It was everything. The action scenes were really well written. They were fast-paced and intense, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. The book also repeatedly called out purity culture crap, and as a feminist, I really appreciated that. My favorite part, besides the romance, of course, the romance is the best, but besides that, my favorite part were the plot twists and the reveals. I am still reeling from the plot twists in this book. After reading some reviews on Goodreads, I learned that a lot of people saw the twists coming. You guys are all so smart. I did not. I am just a clueless, naive girl. I fell for every trick, and there were a lot of them. There were so many plot twists in this. It's crazy how she managed to fit this all into one book. The plot twists are great on their own, but with those dramatic, crazy reveals, I will never forget them. They're ingrained in my memory forever. I spent multiple nights replaying those plot twist reveals in my head before I go to sleep and waking up thinking about Hawk and Poppy. They have lived rent free in my head this month, and I wouldn't have it any other way because I love them, as I have said so many times already. So yeah, 5 freaking stars. I love this entire book with my heart and soul. I loved it, and I would definitely recommend it. And the ending, oh my goodness, it was a cliffhanger ending, and I wanted to start the second book right away, but there are 0 copies available at the library right now. So I have to wait. I'm so upset. I had to put it on hold. I'm gonna have to wait until late February or March to get it. I don't know. And then I read Holding by Alexandra House. This is a hockey romance. It's childhood enemies to lovers book. That's not a spoiler. It's in the blurb, and the relationship history is revealed very early on. These two started off hating it and insulting each other. Then they fell in love and got married and then divorced. It's told in dual timelines. So you get them falling for each other, and eventually you find out what broke them apart in the first place, and you see them rekindling their romance. I like this. It was good. I like the mental health representation, and I liked how short it was. I feel like romance books are just getting longer and longer, and a lot of the time it's unnecessary, and it doesn't need to be that long. It's filled with filler. This doesn't have any filler at all. It's very straightforward and to the point, and I appreciated that. I also just loved how in love the hero was with the FMC. He would cry when she was suffering. He loved and cared for her. So much, and I love to see it. It was really sweet. The reason it's not a 5-star for me is because the sex scenes were really cringy. There was toe sucking involved. Not my thing. If that's your thing, though, no shade. You do you. It just grossed me out personally. I was imagining it in my head, and I hate it. I just hate it. And the dirty talk was also really bad, and it was not turning me on. It was turning me off. If it was one scene, it wouldn't have affected the rating, but there were a bunch of scenes with bad dirty talk. And there was also a locker room talk in here with the hero and his friends, and that grossed me out too. I know it's realistic and that it happens from the real world or whatever, but I don't want to read about it. I don't want to think about it. It's gross. I want to live in Fantasyland and pretend that all men are super romantic and talk about women's personalities and values instead of their bodies and what they'd like to do to said bodies. The Cursed by Harper L. Woods. This is the second book in the Coven of Bones duology. It's a paranormal romance about a witch student and her vessel headmaster. Before I talk about what I like and dislike about this book, I need to say something about the blurb before I forget. In the blurb, it's compared to Shadow and Bone, and I'm so confused by that. They are not similar at all. They are so starkly different that I really don't know what the publishers were going for with that when they made that comparison. For one thing, this is an adult romance and Shadow and Bone is YA. Second of all, there aren't witches in Shadow and Bone. Third of all, I would consider S&B to be an adventure fantasy, and most of the curse is set in the same place, so it's definitely not that. Shadow and Bone is all about quests, and this isn't. The primary love interest in Shadow and Bone isn't an anti-hero like Grey is. I can go on and on. My point is that don't go into this thinking it'll be like Shadow and Bone, because that's what the blurb promises. It's not at all. Sorry for going on a little tangent there, but I just had to get that off my chest because it honestly annoyed me when I read that. They could not have picked a more different book to compare it to. But anyway, let's talk about the actual content of the book. I went to this book with high expectations because the ending of the first book was so wild, and this book did not live up to my expectations. Certain characters that we were led to believe would play a major role in this were very underutilized, which was disappointing, and I also feel like Willow and Grey were going in circles, having the same repetitive conversations and arguments over and over again. With that said, I still enjoyed the book. I gave 4 stars. It just has some faults. that prevented me from absolutely loving it. My favorite thing about this book is probably Willow. She's a snarky queen. I also like that Gray wasn't afraid to tell her and show her how much he cared. He was down bad for her, and he was so open about it, which I love to see it. Gray is also pro-choice, which I love. And then I read The Testing by Joelle Charbonnet. This one is weird for me because when I was looking over my notes, I had more negative things to say about this than positive, but I still ended up liking it and giving it a high rating. The testing is about this dystopian society in which the brightest students are recruited for what is known as the testing after they graduate. Our FMC Valencia is selected for this, and she's initially really excited because those who pass the testing go on to university, and that's a great opportunity, or so she thinks. She soon finds out that the testing is not simply about passing a few exams. The testing is deadly. Dun dun dun. My main gripe with this book is that the world and some of the characters' actions make absolutely no sense. The father, for example, was chosen for the testing and passed, right? And he has had recurring nightmares about what he experienced in the testing ever since. He has dreams about his friends blowing up and whatnot. He knows that the testing is dangerous and horrible. What confuses me is why he decided to wait until Sia was already selected for the testing to tell her all this. Like, why didn't he warn her beforehand? Why didn't he tell her to hide her intelligence so she wouldn't get selected? I just thought that was silly, but it's plot convenience, I guess. There were other characters' actions that made no sense either, but I don't want to get into all of them. Some of them are spoilers, so we're just gonna leave it at that. The plot also didn't really make much sense. The reason for the testing was that Dr. Barnes' father wanted to ensure that the future world leaders were intelligent and worked well under pressure, and okay, that's fair. But there are so many other ways he could have went about finding out whether or not people were intelligent and worked well under pressure that didn't involve murdering a bunch of kids. The reason for the tests didn't seem justified to me. The concept of the tests is cool. I just wish there was a little more legitimate reason for them to exist. The romance in here was also really bland. Thomas has no personality whatsoever, although there was something mentioned at the end of this book that leads me to believe he might become more interesting in the upcoming books. I will be continuing the series, so I'll let you guys on that. Maybe he'll get more interesting. I hope so, because he's really boring as of right now. Even with all that said, I still somehow enjoy this. I really don't know. I don't know how this book still managed to be fun, even though there's so much wrong with it. I guess I really like the tests. They were high stakes, really intense, really suspenseful. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and there were some plot twists that I didn't see coming. I like the way trauma was depicted. The characters weren't uber strong like they sometimes are in dystopian books. They went through horrible things, and their mentality reflected that. And I like that the author depicted Sia as strong and resilient, but still experiencing trauma, because I feel like that there's this idea that trauma makes people weak, and that's simply not true. City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Shadowhunter universe. I was not expecting to like this. I didn't care for the first book in the series. I felt like it was predictable and unoriginal, but I decided to continue the series because it gets so much hype, and I wanted to see what the hype was all about, so I continued. And this was a 5-star read. I'm so glad I continued. This book was great. I really grown on the characters. Jason's my favorite because he's sarcastic, but I also really like Isabel and Alec too. They're so loyal. And who doesn't appreciate loyalty? One of the main things that kept me from enjoying the first book was that it felt disjointed. The plot was kind of all over the place. It felt like a series of random events. It didn't feel like a cohesive whole. I did not feel that way with this book. I loved the plot in this, and I feel like everything connected together really well. The author was going in a clear direction with the plot. It wasn't just random stuff happening, and the fantasy plot was so engrossing that I periodically forgot about the incest plotline. Two Truths and a Lie by Sarah Shepard. This is the third book in the Lion Game series. It follows Emma, who is being forced to take her identical twin sister Sutton's place. Sutton was murdered, and the murderer doesn't want anyone to know, so he, or she, or they, or whatever, is threatening Emma into pretending to be her. And while Emma is impersonating Sutton, she and her boyfriend are trying to figure out who killed her sister. For the record, I think Emma's boyfriend, Ethan, is the killer. I have been saying this since page 1, and my opinion has not changed. He is guilty. I gave this 4 stars. I like these books. They're all really easy to read. The writing flows well. They're all pretty short. This one was less than 300 pages, so it doesn't take long to get through. However, I feel like this mystery is being unnecessarily dragged out. There's no need for one mystery to be 6 books long. I feel like this could be 1 or 2 books, and every book follows the same formula. Emma will be dead set on the murderer being this one person, and then she gets to the end and surprise! New information reveals that the person has been innocent all along, and then the whole scenario will be repeated in the next book. It's just not exciting anymore because every reader knows it's not actually going to be the person she suspects it to be. It's very predictable. All the books are the same. They're still fun though. They're not bad. I just think they could have been condensed into 1 or 2 books so the series doesn't feel so repetitive. A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. Oof, this one was a big boy. It's over 1,000 pages. This is the 3rd book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, which is an epic fantasy series. This was definitely my favorite of the series so far because so many of my favorite storylines from the show happen in this book. This book had Jamie and the Hand. If you know, you know. The John and Ygritte pairing thrived in this book. The Red Wedding happened, which was my favorite scene in the entire show. And Jamie and Brienne scenes that I ate up because I ship them so much. This was really good. The reason it's not a 5 is because some of the characters' point of view chapters really bore me. All the Lies by Rena Kent. I have come to the conclusion that maybe Rena Kent books just aren't for me. This is the 2nd book I've read from her, and the first one was 1 star, so this is an improvement, but I still didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. It's a dark college romance with a mystery element. This is about a girl named Rena who has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything about her life, so she's trying to put the pieces together. There is an anonymous someone called G who wants revenge on Rena for something she did in the past and keeps attacking her. The romance is between her and her fiance Asher, who is awful to her because of, again, something she did in her past that she doesn't remember. This book is advertised as a romance, but there wasn't much romance in it. Rena interacted more with the cheer squad than she did with Asher, and most of the scenes she had with Asher weren't even romantic. They were just bullying and abuse and lust. Their relationship is definitely more lust than love, I would say. And then near the end of the book, he pulls a complete 180 and gives her a hug. He just feels so out of place. There was no relationship development to get to that, so it just didn't feel believable to me. The dialogue and the plot is also really repetitive. The plot consists of Rena getting attacked by Chi, going unconscious, and waking up safe and sound with no recollection of what happened. That happened multiple times. I think it happened like 3 times. And with the dialogue, Rena would call Asher Ash, and he'd get pissed and say, "It's Asher." I think that happened in every single conversation they had. I kid you not. It was just repetitive and annoying. It wasn't that I did like the mystery element, though. I had fun putting the clues together to make sense of who Rena was before and who G is. That part was fun for me. I would have appreciated this book more if it was a mystery, not a mystery romance. Overall, 2 stars. I decided to continue with the Lies and Truths duet, even though I didn't like it the first book because I just hate leaving things unfinished. So I read All the Lies by Rena Kent. I like this one better than the first, but I still didn't really enjoy it, so 3 stars. I feel like that's fair. There was more fluffy, cute, romantic scenes in this one, which is why I liked it more. There was more cuddling, some caretaking, some other cutesy things that bumped the rating up. But was it enjoyable? Not really. The Maid by Nita Prose. This is a murder mystery about a maid. Yes, I know. Truly shocking. It's about a hotel maid who finds a dead man in one of the hotel rooms she cleans. She unintentionally gets herself wrapped up in the crime, and we have to find out who done it. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It's weirdly wholesome for a murder mystery. Molly's just this cutie patootie. I adore her. And her friendships in this book were really cute. I didn't like the actual mystery, though. It wasn't very exciting or thrilling, and the reveal of who done it felt anticlimactic. Also, Molly is heavily implied to be on the spectrum, and her representation came off as stereotypical and almost demeaning. Like, I'm not the person to talk about this, though, because I'm not on the spectrum myself, and I don't have enough background knowledge on the subject to speak on it in a really insightful way, but I don't know. It just came across that way sometimes to me. The Wives by Taryn Fisher. This is a story about a very non-traditional marriage. The FMC is married to a man who has 2 other wives. They all know he has multiple wives, but none of the wives are allowed to know personal information about the other or speak to the other. Things start to get interesting when the FMC finds out who one of the other wives is. She starts to get to know her under false pretenses and starts learning shocking information about the man she married from this other wife. The more you read, the more you realize that this husband isn't as dreamy as the main character thinks he is. The pacing of this is really good. That's such an interesting premise. I really liked the whole concept of this book. This book was so wild in the absolute best way possible. The plot twists were crazy, so unhinged. I ate it up. It was so addicting. 5 stars. Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is the 2nd book in the Lunar Chronicles series. Each book in the series is a retelling of a different fairy tale. This one is a retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood story. Scarlet's grandmother goes missing, and she works with this guy named Wolf to try to find her. I gave this 4 stars. It was good. I enjoyed myself mostly because of Thorn. He's a new addition, and he became my favorite character after like 3 lines. He's so funny and charming, and I love him so much. He better not die, because I know it's a thing to kill the funny side character off in fantasy books, but please, no. Not him, not Thornton, anyone but him. I also really enjoyed Cinder in this, my sarcastic cyborg queen. I love her so much. The reason it's not a 5-star is because the pacing is a little too slow for my liking. I wanted things to move along a little quicker, like, come on, chop chop. If the pacing was better, this could have easily been a 5-star, because I love the characters and the fairy tale concept is really cool. The series has so much potential. I'm hoping it lives up to it in the 3rd book. The Queen's Army by Marissa Meyer. This is a short story that's also a part of the Lunar Chronicles series. It follows Wolf. It goes over his initiation into the pack and his experiences in there over the years, how he moved up the ranks, stuff like that. As far as short stories go, this one was pretty solid. It spanned over years, so we get to see a whole lot of things play out within only a few pages. It was an interesting short story. I liked it. 4 stars. The Right Swipe by Alicia Rye. This is a second chance romance about 2 individuals who work in the dating app industry. They shared a very passionate one-night stand, and they were planning on meeting up again, but he ghosted her, and now they've been brought back together again. I found the romance in this to be quite boring. They had no chemistry. The author kept telling us they had chemistry, but I never felt it. And the love interest was really bland. He had no depth. The only thing he had going for him was his protectiveness. I like that. Every other aspect of his personality fell flat for me, though. I did like the FMC, though. She was a lot more fleshed out than her love interest. She felt real. She had flaws that she was working through and motivations. She didn't just exist like Samson did. I gave this 3 stars. Half of it worked for me, half of it didn't. The Silent Patient by Alex Michelides. This follows a psychotherapist named Theo who starts working at this mental ward. He has a particular interest in one patient named Alicia who shot her husband point blank in the face multiple times and has not spoken since then. It's been years and she has not uttered a single word since the incident. Theo wants to get to the bottom of why she won't speak and what really happened that night, so he starts interviewing her friends and family and working with her personally, and you, as a reader, are just kind of along for the ride. This was fine. I just don't feel like it stands out too much against other thrillers I've read. It wasn't all that exciting to me. I never felt thrilled while reading it. The whole time I was reading this, I was just banking on the plot twist being good because everyone hypes it up. Every person I've heard talk about this book has said the plot twist got them, so I was really ready to be shocked to my core. I thought I would be forever changed like I was with the Maidens. I read it a couple months ago and I still think about that plot twist because how could I be so blind? Oh my goodness. With this one though, I wasn't blind. My glasses were on and I saw the plot was coming. I read a mystery thriller last year with a similar twist, so it wasn't anything new to me. It didn't shock me. With that being said, I still liked this. Liked some of the psychological fun facts. I liked how it delved into how trauma from childhood can affect people in adulthood. That whole thing was fascinating to me, but as for the thrill, it wasn't thrilling. The plot just didn't get me, so it's just not a 5. Honestly, maybe a 3.5, if I'm being honest with myself. The Fury by Alex Michelides. This is Alex's newest release. It came out in January, and I wasted no time. I got ahead of the game, put myself on the hold list at the library months ago so that I could be the first to get it. Yay! Look at me, look at it. The Fury is a murder mystery. This retired movie star invites her friends and family to go on vacation with her to an island in Greece, and there is a murder. Dun dun dun. Who did it? Was it the son? The jealous best friend? The cheating husband? No one knows. It's up to us to find out. This one took me by surprise because after the book release, the average Goodreads rating started dropping substantially. I thought I would leave disappointed, but I actually liked it. I liked it better than The Silent Patient. Not better than The Maidens, though. The plot twists were all really good. I was getting whiplash because he kept misleading us and then throwing another plot twist at us. This 20% of this book was so crazy fun. It's not a full 5 stars because it was really slow in the beginning. We didn't get to the actual murder bit until after 30% of the way through the book. In the end, though, I didn't care about the pacing. It was all worth it for those twists. I also feel like the book had interesting character dynamics. There was a lot of layers within the group that had to be unraveled, and I like that. And I like the narration style. The narrator continuously broke the fourth wall to talk to us, and I weirdly liked it. I used to hate that because I thought it was tacky, but it was fun in this. I don't know. New year, new me, I guess. I liked it. Overall rating 4 stars. Then I read the best book of the month. I didn't think anything could beat From Blood and Ash, but here we are. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I'm getting emotional just thinking about this book. My eyes are watering. I need to get it together. Okay. Breathe in. Out. In. Out. Okay. I'm okay now. This is a second chance. Opposites attract. Best friends to lovers romance. emotional again. Oh my goodness. This book is everything to me. It hit so hard. It touched my soul. I connected with the characters and the story and the relationship so deeply. And it wasn't like I was only connecting to Poppy either, but I was also connecting with Alex on the same level, and we weren't even in his point of view. It's just crazy that I connected with him that deeply, and I wasn't even in his head. It really speaks to how talented Emily Henry is as an author. This book just made me feel so seen. I can't even put into words how much I love this. There aren't words to explain the feelings I got while reading this, and even after reading it, I'm still, I don't know, I'm in disbelief at how a 300-page book could make me feel so much. I cried while reading this multiple times, and it was over stupid stuff like Alex kissing her forehead while she's not feeling well. Yeah, I'm that dramatic over them. I'm so glad I read this in my room by myself, because if someone saw my reactions to this, I would never live it down. Their love story is just so beautiful. They were made for each other, and it was making me emotional. And the writing, oh my goodness, there's so many beautiful quotes in here. I wrote them down in my notes app, and I had over 40. It boggles my mind that this is most people's least favorite Emily Henry book. I feel like that's the general consensus, and I don't get it at all. Not that I'm saying that you guys are wrong. Everyone has their own opinions and their own feelings, obviously, but it's just so crazy to me because I can't imagine not loving this. I would argue that this is Emily Henry's best book. I love this so much. My feelings for this book transcend love. I told myself I was going to take my time with it because as soon as I read the first chapter, I was in love with the characters and the relationship. I didn't want to rush through it. I really tried not to. I think I read this for 4 days. The last day, though, I came home from class and I just sat in my bed and read it until midnight. I couldn't stop. It didn't even feel like I was reading. It all felt so real to me. This book is seriously just ingrained in my soul. Alex is right up there with Ivan Lukov and Ryan Jay as my number one book boyfriend. They're all tied. I'm not choosing, and you can't make me. He's the most precious, wholesome, considerate, supportive, sweet guy I've ever read about. He was just so perfect, and he's shy, and it was so cute. I love Poppy too. She's hilarious, and them together, oh, just show me they're everything. You guys should see my annotations. I annotated almost every single page of this book. I'm so glad I actually bought this. I found this at Goodwill, and I left without it. The first time I left the store, and then I went home, and I was just like, you're so cheap. It was literally $2, and you know you love Emily Henry, so just buy it, you silly little girl. So I drove back there the next morning and bought it, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I can look at this book on my bookshelf every day. I'm so glad I can flip through it whenever I want, and my favorite quotes and lines will stand out because they're underlined and annotated. I can revisit it whenever I want. Totally worth the $2 I spent. I'm so cheap. The fact that it's literally $2 and everything is such a big deal of it at first. I just don't like spending money on things I know I can get for free, and the library has copies of this, so I was just gonna get it from them, but I'm glad I decided against that. Support your local library and everything, but treat yourself every once in a while. Okay, I'm done now. I'm sorry. I know I've been talking about this book for a long time, but I never want to stop talking about it. I'm never going to get over them. Then I finished Enemies to Lovers by Portia McIntosh. This is an enemies/rivals to lovers book. It's about 2 journalists who are tasked with going to this mysterious couples retreat to figure out what's going on and write about it. And what makes this book extra fun is that they have to fake date to get insider info. This plot is so gloriously rom-com-y. I love it. Oh, and it's also reverse Scrubby Sunshine, which makes it even more fun. I gave this 4 stars. This was a really fun time. It's filled with harmless pranks and snarky banter. It was a good time. The thing is, I'm not sure that Laura and Sunny would last with their trust and communication issues. Those are 2 vital aspects of every relationship, and this couple does not have either of them. Even by the end of the book, they were having problems centered around their trust and communication issues. And you know, maybe with therapy, they would make it. Otherwise, I don't think so. I think they're breaking up 2 weeks after they get back from their trip. I finally got around to reading The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and it was so good. I'm so glad I discovered Frida McFadden last year because I've been slowly making my way through her backlist, and it's been such a fun time. I love her writing. This is about a housemaid named Millie. Kind of weird that I read 2 thrillers this month about a maid named Millie, and they were both published in the same year, but anyway, she starts working for this family, and things are not right with the wife. She lies, she screams, she accuses Millie of things. She's got a lot of issues, and as you go on, things continue escalating. This was so good. It was fast-paced. I love Millie. She's a strong, capable, hardworking queen. There's short chapters. There's lots of foreshadowing and clues leading up to the twist, which I love. I love when thrillers do that, when the readers have the opportunity to try to put the pieces together to figure out the big twist. I feel like a detective, and it's so fun. It's all so good. I read this so fast. It was so addicting. I didn't want to stop reading it. Definitely worth the hype, in my opinion. 5 stars. Last but not least, Addicted After All by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I ended the month on a good one. It was another 5-star read. Finishing this feels so bittersweet. I'm so sad because Slowly Lo's last book, I remember I said I think after I finished the third book, I said, no one needs 5 books. A single couple does not need 5 books. It's a bit excessive to have 5 books dedicated to them. Yeah, I'm gonna eat my words. I changed my mind. I'm so sad after finishing this. I wish they had more books. In fact, I wish they had 20. But the way it ended was so perfect. The characters have come so far, and the things they're doing now with their lives feel really fitting for their characters. I'm really satisfied with the conclusion to their story. There wasn't a better way to end it. And with the end of the series comes the end of this video.